In one form or another, precious metals will play a role in the coming system because it's a value that is there that is not imaginary.
Welcome to the Silver Doctors exclusive. Today I'm excited to have my guest, Mr. Iustin Rosioara, joining us from masteringthehumanexperience.com. He's an historian, a researcher, and a monetary enthusiast. Today he's joining us on the Silver Doctors to talk about gold and a variety of just monetary things that we were never taught in school. So, Iustin, welcome to Silver Doctors.
Thank you, Mike. I'm very glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you taking time to sit down with us and to share a lot of your research and your work. Before we dive any further, for those that do not know Iustin, give us a little bit about your background, how you became a researcher and historian, how you've written so many great books, and give us a little bit of your upbringing and how you arrived at this point of talking about monetary and financial matters.
Well, it's a long story, but I'll try to make it short. So I grew up in Romania, in communist Romania. At the age of 25, I moved to Norway. Then I went back to Romania in 1990 after the communism was gone. Then I came a few years after that, I came here to the United States. So actually I experienced a lot of economic systems and I know the good and the bad ones. And in that process, I was very interested to find out what works and what doesn't. And I was contradicted by a lot of monetary economic theories. And it seems so hard for me to understand because certain things didn't make sense at all. And then I was looking for answers in the Bible because I was thinking, after thousands of years where billions of people did transactions every day, we still are searching and we don't know. It's clear that mankind doesn't have an answer. So now I ended up looking into what is money, what is a sound money system, what means fair exchanges, what are valuable products and services, and what is a valuable and fair system of money for exchange. And this is how I ended up looking in the Bible, and this is how I had some discoveries about gold and silver from that perspective.
Written quite a lot of books. So from your beginning to your most recent book, which is God's Money. And so what was some of the transitioning periods that led you from basically relaying your life's experiences until you finally decided to reach the point of going into the Bible for some answers for yourself?
Well, I had to relate to different definitions of money in different systems. And as I mentioned, some of them made sense, some of them didn't. And, I can reference to, it was at one point I was on the airport on Heathrow when I had a piece of paper saying, I promised to give to the bearer on demand the amount of £5. And that piece of paper was a £5 paper. And I was thinking, okay, do I have what's with this promise thing? Is like, do I have £5 or I do have a promise of £5? Where are the pounds there? And that is how this led me to investigate the system, the fiat money system that we're currently having. The fact that actually we don't have assets, we just transfer an instrument of debt, a note from one person to another, and we call it money. That's kind of what triggered that. It was so intriguing for me. So that is what triggered my interest to start looking into the different monetary theories. Right. And of course, I found out that the most fair system is based on sound money.
Well, fair enough. Now, I took away from that you mentioned the transferring of debt money. So debt, everything has resolved around debt now. So our entire monetary system has changed drastically. And so from your research there, from what used to be considered a sound money system and era prior to the central banking model, give us some of the walk down as to the going back in history now to how we've arrived at this current debt-based model based upon your studies.
Well, we started with sound money, which were coins and of silver and gold was used for large transactions. Silver was used for everyday transactions. And of course, as the society evolved, as things started to move faster and communication went faster, society needed more and easier and a more expedient system for transferring value as the economy developed. that is when we've got the banking system. That is when we've got the debit credit operation. And that was a system based on recording ownership rights over certain quantities of metals. But at some point, that chain was broken because when invented, I mean, not we, but it was invented the fractional reserve banking, which allows the bank to keep only a fraction of the deposits and give and multiply the money this way. Then we invented this system where a higher nominal value covered a lower amount of metal. And then we finally ended up with a system where there is no connection between the currencies that is created, be it dollar, euro, yen, Swiss francs, or whatever. There is no connection between that and any form of physical metal. So actually we have an unlimited supply of currencies because these are just some numbers in some computers, sometimes printed on a piece of paper, but there is no relationship between the value of the paper and how much work and matter is involved in that value.
Right, understandable. Now let's take it back and just use more of a historical standpoint and talk about your most recent book, which is God's Money. And so you did a lot of research on this from a biblical standpoint here. So this is not necessarily about religion directly. This is more so from a historical documentation of events based upon gold and silver. So take us back to the very beginning. What's the roots of gold and silver mentioned in the Bible from a biblical standpoint, assuming we go back to Genesis more than likely?
Well, yeah, if we go back to Genesis, if we look at from the creation, there were some things that were said right in the first and second chapter. And one of them was that God created matter, and the matter is one component. But then nothing was growing after that. It was only when mankind was created and mankind was given a labor assignment, an economic mandate, actually, because the mandate that was given to be fruitful, to multiply, to replenish, and subdue, that is actually a management for growth mandate. So that was the instruction given to Adam, was to bring the labor into the picture. So actually is this connection between matter, which is God's contribution, and labor, which is man's contribution, that make things valuable. And from here, everything is growing according to the principles established in the beginning, where we know that every seed will produce after its kind, and every plant that or every living creature, when it comes to the maturity, it will produce a seed for the next generation. So that's a principle that was activated in the beginning. So nothing else was created after that. It was just the matter in the beginning, the principle for growth, and then man is supposed to bring the labor. So that is how value is created. Now with gold, that's a purpose to be. Maybe a separate discussion about, but the gold serves a purpose together with silver, and we can bring that in here because silver and money, there is the same word in original text. So it's actually both in Hebrew in the Old Testament. Kesef means both silver and money, and in the New Testament in Greek, arguros or argulion is used as silver and money. So this metal and money serves as money. That's the purpose. So actually, if we go back and boil everything down, that's the whole idea. God creates matter, man brings the labor, and for value, these two elements are necessary. And silver, because of the availability, becomes a medium exchange used as money, and gold is kind of the bigger brother that serves as the medium exchange for large transactions.
Right. Now we're talking about, the bigger brother, the medium of exchange. So more so the ratio aspect. And so from a biblical standpoint, not sure if you had a chance to dive into it, but as far as like over the latter part of the years before we were moved off the gold standard, silver standard, whatnot, there was a ratio of 16-1. And so now it's 80. So I haven't even checked, but it's quite large. And so from a biblical standpoint, was there any reference in the Bible as to the valuations of those two monies in circulation with each other?
I think the most direct reference we can look at when the Israelites were bringing their offerings, their free-willing offerings to building the tabernacle, and the ratio was exactly 20-1. They were bringing 10 shekels of gold and 200 shekels of silver. So that's the ratio. That and even modern geological estimates, they find that ratio is very close to 20-1, 17-18, depending on the measurements and estimates, but it's around there. And yeah, the fact that today we can buy over 80 actually, I think now it's around 82, 83 ounces of silver for each ounce of gold. It shows that it's a very basically silver is way undervalued.
In regards to labor, silver terms throughout history, compared to what they made then and now, what's the quantity of silver for a day's wage?
Well, it depends on which references we're using, because there are some references in the Old Testament, there are some references in the New Testament, and basically it's about 1 day would be like 1 shekel, which is considered to be around a half of troy ounce. So some other estimates talk about 1 ounce for a day of work equivalent. They had different weight measurements at that time. But we have to think about one thing, is that first, when he betrayed Jesus, he sold him for 30 pieces of silver. We can understand what is the value of those 30 pieces if you would betray a friend. So you have to, even if you're a very greedy person, that must be a high value. And we have also another, in the Old Testament, we have a history with Samson and Delilah. The leaders of the Philistines were willing to pay 1,100 shekels to Delilah to deceive Samson. And 1,100 shekels would be like 500 ounces of silver today. Another thing is that when Joseph was sold, he was sold for 20 shekels of silver. And again, that would be like 10 ounces today. So sometimes it's hard to determine the exact quantity. But yeah, what we know is that there is a connection between 1 day of work, and we're not talking about unqualified. We're talking about a qualified skilled labor would be somewhere between a half and 1 troy ounce today. That would be kind of the equivalent.
Right, understandable there. Now, moving forward a little bit, and so now, at this current moment now, there's talks of a global slowdown, and there's fears of a recession, and so those same concepts are nothing new. They've been around quite some time now, but yet from a biblical standpoint, there's always been slowdowns in the economy, famines of that sort. What are some principles or whatnot that you probably can share from your research throughout history from the biblical perspective that can be relevant to this, what we're approaching now, this current economic slowdown or recession that's possibly coming?
Well, there are 2 things that I can think about it. One of them is the history about Joseph, and then is Abraham, of course. But let's take Joseph first, because that was kind of the first depiction of an economic crisis. We had 7 years of abundance followed by 7 years of famine, severe crisis. And there are 2 interesting aspects studying that episode. First of all is the solution that Joseph brought to the table. Was not stimulus, was not money printing, was nothing. It was very simple. It's like, okay, you have 7 years of abundance, take 20% of the crops of the harvest and put them in a storage. So when the next 7 years of famine come, then you will have enough resources to compensate for the losses in those years. So that's very simple, and that's a model that we should apply. It's a lesson that is still valid today. So we have good times, we can save, and of course it's a question, what do we save in? That's another discussion. But we should accumulate some reserves that we could use in scarcer time. Another thing that comes to my mind is the model that Abraham, he was blessed in cattle, silver, and gold. So these 3 elements, they represent the three economic areas. Cattle is production, silver is exchange or trade, and gold is wealth accumulation that can be used for large purchases or for transfer to future generation. So all these three are important. And if we study the Abraham's life, he was very active and growing in each of these areas. So we cannot, so when the crisis comes and the scarcity, and there is, we need to have those resources available to compensate for the lower production income that we have because of the crisis. And it's also a matter of what kind of assets do we have to protect ourselves, because when we have assets with intrinsic value, that they are assets that everybody desires, that are easy to exchange for something that we need, compared to assets like financial assets that are actually just liabilities of different companies. And it's a matter of how can we use those in times of in difficult times, because if there is no desire for someone to buy those financial assets, if we have no buyers, then their values is practically zero.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, like you gave us three categories of what was considered tangible wealth is in the form of cattle, silver, gold, and it had relations to the economy. But nowadays, unfortunately, we're in a digital world and a paper world predominantly, to where those things don't really apply now. So let's talk a little bit about how some of those principles that was biblically sound and worked for lots of years, now we don't have those same options, and people aren't aware of what options they do have. What do you think, where are we heading with this current paradigm we're in now of digits and paper?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to sound very pessimistic in my my estimations, but we have to understand one thing: is that these financial assets that we talk about, they are just numbers in computer, and we attach some labels to them called currencies. And these are imaginary. There are no real assets. There is no value behind a dollar in or an euro or a yen. So everything it's a matter of perception. So that is what allows us to keep the economy going. In the moment that confidence behind these concepts of value dissipates, if that confidence is not there anymore, then we lose everything. So I think it's very important to go back. We should have a layer of protection that consists of intrinsic things.
So moving forward, nowadays in this new era now, being in a solely digital world and moving more towards digits, there's a cryptocurrency sector, and a lot of people, young and some a little bit of older generation, are now excited about what was considered the first decentralized or whatever blockchain-based coin, which is called Bitcoin, and they call it digital gold. And so, what are your thoughts on physical tangible gold and this newer version, this hybrid version of Bitcoin labeled as digital gold?
Yeah, I think it's not the same, and it doesn't mean, in a way, I dislike the fact that there is so much. I don't find the right word. It's because they are actually complements. We have to understand the real weakness of cryptocurrencies generally. I agree with the value of it, the fact that there is someone who is working, there is some work behind it. So there is a lot of work to put together, to a lot of computing power and algorithms, and that's labor that creates all these things. But at the same time, the whole system depends on internet to work. It depends on the whole environment, digital environment to work, and that is kind of a weakness. We understand that, or I understand that we have distributed ledger. That's very good, and we can do a lot of things to eliminate the risks for that. But I see them as completely different things, and I personally don't invest in in cryptocurrencies for the simple fact that I didn't put enough work to understand it. And I think it's very important, whoever invests, does an investment, that you understand what you're investing in. So, but I see the benefit of it, of those cryptocurrencies. And another thing that we need to understand is that we have types of assets like precious metals, like real estate, like land, and things like that. They're kind of real. And we have a lot of financial assets that are valued with hundreds of trillions of dollars, if not more. Well, at some point, when the crisis will come, there will be a rush into to move from those financial assets to tangible physical assets. That cannot go. That move from financial to tangible will go through two channels. Will be through cash and possible through cryptocurrencies, because people will look for, okay, what can I sell these things for, and what can I get in exchange? So I don't see necessarily cryptocurrencies, especially when some value attached to the transactions that go somehow beyond the transaction itself, when there are goods and services moved back and forth. So I don't see them as directly opposite. I see them as complementary, and actually I would like to see more cooperation between the precious metal people and the crypto people, more cooperation, because actually there is one thing that we both dislike, and that's the currency system, the fiat money.
Right. I agree 100%. And so, like, moving forward, as we look ahead, transition to digital through the cryptocurrency concept. And so, will there be a standard again? And so a lot of people say we need a gold standard, wouldn't work because this is silver standard, whatever. We have people mention about a Bitcoin standard. I mean, what should the standard be moving forward for our daily lives, for our savings, for everything to do with our financial lives and lifestyle, in your opinion?
I think that because the society evolves in different directions, and it will be hard to determine a standard, because I see a strong future of something I call crypto commodities, where, for instance, oil, the services, goods and services related to oil industry will be transacted directly in the oil that is extracted from the ground and distributed. Because actually, if you think about all the value in one industry, it's funneled through that commodity that is extracted. So there will be different solutions, and I think there will be a sort of a baseline which precious metals may represent, kind of the universal medium of exchange, but they are not the only one. So I think that in general, how should I say, not open mind, but I'm very open to different possibilities, because the world got so complex now that it's hard to define one standard that is applicable for everybody. So because of the complexity, it's very hard to see the dynamics of the future events. So it's like a lot of people say, well, we're going to have a deflationary crisis, and we're going to have, then will be followed by a lot of money printing, and that will lead to hyperinflation. Yeah, I agree that may be the case, but it may happen different in different countries. The reactions will be different. Some countries have a strong base. For instance, one of the great advantages of the United States, I think, is that there is a lot of goods and services that are here in this country. So it's a huge population that needs goods and services. The only problem right now that we have a monetary system that charges interest on every single transaction. So some countries will be better off. So we have a hard time understanding the dynamics of the things that will come. So I think that it's very important, going back to your question, I think we need to be open and prepared for things to go in different directions and with different time frames. I think it's hard to have one standard. I think we'll end up with many solutions. In a way, it's like I'm thinking, when you asked the question, I was thinking about the programming language. When we talk about programming languages, people ask, okay, which language should I learn? You know, when I started, because I'm an engineer as a background, we learned there were two languages. It was Fortran, COBOL, and actually then BASIC came a little bit later on. Now we have so many programming languages, we don't have a standard any longer. So I think it's going to be kind of the same. So we have to be prepared for different dynamics in the crisis. But yeah, for sure, sooner or later, because there is so much data accumulated worldwide, there will be some form of reset.
Form of reset. So last question here, Iustin. Moving forward, there will be some type of reset. And so that means that the dollar, the Federal Reserve note, will not be the anchor of all fiat currencies. And so there is no standard. You have an idea what could be a standard. And so we know, based upon what the Eastern nations are doing, China, Russia, they're accumulating large amounts of gold. So I imagine whatever standard does come or initiated from that part of the world will have gold back to it. So last question, what are your thoughts on like the gold-backed cryptocurrencies? Is that something that will be a valid? Because I'd imagine they're going to incorporate blockchain and gold, because gold has a history behind it. Blockchain is new. So I can see those more merging together. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's one of the solutions that will emerge. And, you know, I'll just say one quick thing about when people are talking about China's gold reserves. There are different numbers, and people say, well, how much is the National Bank of China? Well, we don't have to forget that that is a communist country, even if they encourage capitalist measures. So what will happen is that at some point, if that gold is needed, whatever gold is in the territory within the boundaries of the countries, that becomes national ownership. It's not going to be in the hands of the people if that is required. But on the other hand, they may think that, okay, our people are better off if they have gold, and we know that they encourage ownership of gold. But yeah, I think that will be one of the solutions, and have some form of connection between blockchain or a digital solution connected to gold or even silver in the vaults. That's I think it's one of the things that will be based on. In one form or another, precious metals will play a role in the coming system, because it's a value that is there, that is not imaginary. That's right. What it is.
Right. Iustin Rosioara, I appreciate you for joining me here on Silver Doctors and sharing your studies as well as just your thoughts on days ahead. People can find out more about where you're located at masteringthehumanexperience.com, as well as where you have more information about your books there and whatnot. So once again, it's been great connecting with you here on Silver Doctors. Look forward to following your work and continue to do what you do, educating people and spreading truth. So once again, Iustin, thank you for joining us on Silver Doctors.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.